Do you have all the things they say should make you happy, but you still feel unfulfilled? Are you always doing what you should do? Or do you never feel like you're enough? And you want to feel better, more fulfilled, more aligned, and more comfortable in your own body? Then this is the show. Scared as fuck and doing it anyway, showing up authentically. My name is Paula Schuster, and I'm a self-love and authenticity coach. My life completely changed when I started loving myself again, putting myself first, and being true to me. This is the show that's going to help you get out of being stuck, out of the cycles of self-abandonment, and help you choose yourself without feeling selfish. It will give you not only inspiration, but awareness, courage, and insights to make changes and live your life for you. Hey everyone, I'm starting today's episode by sharing a recent review that we received on the podcast. I logged on to Apple Podcasts to grab one for this, and I noticed that we had a few of them. So it's so exciting and it's uplifting and it makes me smile so big. And I'm going to share one of them with you. It's from Anne Reed, and it says, "The title of the show alone is refreshing because it's so authentic. Then you dive in and find that Paula is so real and shares practical advice for anyone who wants to quit living for others and truly wants to live authentically." Aw, thank you so much, Anne. You're the best. I appreciate you so much for taking time to leave a review. All of the reviews and feedback, it inspires me to keep going and to up-level my content and guests even more. I'm always thinking about you, about my listeners, and really just improving the whole experience for you. So if you ever want to talk about it or give me feedback, I'm always open to it and I would love to connect. So if you're feeling it, reach out to me at paula@reikiflowmn.com. Hello, beauties. Welcome back to the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, Showing Up Authentically podcast. You're with your host, Paula Schuster. It's good to be with you. Real quick, you might be hearing rain in the background because it's raining and there's nothing I can do about that. So anyway, I want to do a quick check-in with ourselves. What's going on? What's happening with you? What's present for you? I hope you're well. And I just want to say that I love you and thanks for tuning in today. And yes, I can say I love you even when I don't know you because that's who I am. I'm a lover and I believe that we're all connected and we are all one. And I love myself. I love my wife. I love my kids, my parents, most of my family. No, I love my family, my friends. And so that means I love you all too. And, there are people out in this world who can hate you without knowing you personally. And so that means that I can love you without knowing you personally. As one of my coaches says, we are all masterpieces because we are pieces of the master. And we are all someone because we are some of the one. We're all connected. So that's what I believe. All right, last week I opened with an invitation for you to be more authentic and honest by not responding with good, and I say that with air quotes, not responding with good when someone asks you how you're doing and you're really not doing good. And if you are doing good, I challenged you to respond with a different word or words other than good because we can do better than that, for one. And if we're not actually doing good, then it's such a disservice to all of us to respond that way. So I hope you're giving it a try. It's hard to do because it's like become this reflex now in our society. But I hope you're trying. I don't want to take too much time in my intro this week because the interview today is a little bit longer, so I'll make this quick. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about what's present for me. I'm super grateful right now. And part of that is because I attended my good friend Bailey's bachelorette party this past weekend, and it was fun and relaxing and so fucking good to be in the presence of a group of spiritual, loving, like-minded women. And I didn't even know most of them, which made it even better because I had the opportunity to meet new friends. It was so cool. I think there were like 11 of us, and I knew 2 really well, one being the bride. And I barely knew 2 others, and then the rest were all new to me, which was such a blessing. I had the opportunity to offer the group a sound bath, which is one of the reasons why I'm feeling so grateful. And it was so cool, and it just filled me right up. I just love sharing the gift of sound healing with people, like especially women, and especially when it involves my lovely earth gong. And this one did. I hauled it up there. Um, and technically, this was like my first private event that I did, and it was the first sound bath that I did all on my own, all by myself. So now I can say I have experience with private events, and that's my daughter in the refrigerator downstairs. Our refrigerator beeps when it's been open for too long. So sorry about that. But I can say now that I have experience with private events, and I'm also confident with doing solo sound baths. So that's really fucking cool. So yay. I got a tarot reading this weekend, which was amazing. We painted our inner goddesses. We ate a ton of chips and chocolate. We enjoyed psychedelic mushrooms and a trippy dance party. And we were introduced, oh yeah, check this out. We were introduced to a new TV show called Naked Attraction, which you can find on YouTube and apparently on Max. So, oh my gosh, this show, you guys, you have to check it out. It's a British dating show where everyone's naked. Contestants, like, they pick their mate by naked physical appearance and voice only. And afterwards, they put their clothes on and they go on a regular date, which is sometimes more awkward than being naked in front of each other. It's really interesting. It's really refreshing, actually. And I love how the show like normalizes our bodies, because at the end of the day, we all have a naked body and they come in all different shapes and sizes, and our bodies aren't anything to be ashamed of. And they have both girls, naked girls and boys. So for people who are like bisexual, they have both girls and guys to pick from on the episode for them. So that's really cool. It's like really inclusive. So there you go. There you go. I was introduced to some new friends and a new TV show that normalizes nakedness. Right on. All right. So on to the guest for this week. MaryBeth is on with me. She's one of my podcasting pod group sisters. And I'm so excited to have her on. I freaking love this girl's vibe so much. Like, I just think she's so cool. Like, the way she talks is cool. The way she carries herself is cool. And all that she shares in our conversation today is cool. I think MaryBeth is a deep thinker. She's thoughtful. She's fun. She has a growth mindset. She's like full of surprises. She's genuine. Like, you know, what you see is what you get. And I love getting to know this woman better. She like helps me grow. Another thing that stands out for me about MaryBeth is how intentionally she uplifts other women. And I admire that a great deal. Like, that's something that I require now in my friends, like for the people in my inner circle. And if you're not uplifting others, especially other women, you're out, you know, like you're just out for me. And MaryBeth is super purposeful about doing that. So that's one of the things I love about her. She's a gem and she's a keeper. I'm really excited to share our conversation. So without further ado, please welcome my friend, MaryBeth. Hey, MaryBeth, welcome to the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, Showing Up Authentically podcast. I am so excited to have you here because I love your vibe so fucking much. And I love your energy. And I'm just so glad that we met.
Dude, me too. I'm so excited to be here. I'm totally blushing. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I always say that first. I got to get away from that. Anyway, give us some context. Tell us about who you are.
So, like we were talking about earlier, I feel like I'm so bad at this question because it's just like we're also multifaceted, right?
Yeah.
So, usually when I describe myself, it's I'm kind of a hot mess. I'm just out here super ADHD and like recently realizing that that's part of why my life doesn't look like anybody else's. But recently I've been on this journey of like embracing that. So I'm kind of just pursuing like the allowing myself to be and embracing my free spirit and not trying to like fit myself into as much of a box as I used to. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. In general, I just turned 35. I'm going through a divorce. I work in corporate right now, and I have a podcast about empowering women
Right
because I'm
on.
working towards starting a coaching business. So right now, just really in between in a lot of places. And that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of always where I'm at, because we're always evolving.
Yes.
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I love that. I love that you are embracing and allowing yourself to just be, right? Embracing your ADHD, embracing where you are, and allowing your free spirit. And you know what's funny to me is that or interesting, I guess I should say, is that you kind of consider that to be in between when you're allowing your free spirit. And that is like part of our conditioning, I feel, right? Like
Yeah.
because what if that just was the way, what if that it just is who you are all the time and that isn't an in between and that's just fucking great.
I think it is. I'm just like not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. You're on your way though. And I love that.
Yeah, but then it's also like, when am I ever not going to be on my way? S- So I'm like, I don't know. I feel like the transition is life, and I think one of these days I'm going to figure that out. That the in between time is life. There's that quote that's like, life is what happens when you're making other plans. And I think I've been learning that a lot recently. Like the seasons that I label as like transition or in between time, like that's what life is all about. Like it's
So
not
then
about
are you, I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
sorry, it's not about arriving anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And so are you enjoying it right now then? Like, are you just like enjoying the process of it all, enjoying life?
Yes, bro. Yes. I'm like, oh, I'm chilling so hard right now, and it's wild to me. Like I've always considered myself like very uptight, um, almost like high maintenance, like because I'm very sensitive, and so like everything bothers me, and I consider myself like very type A. I need, and it's an ADHD thing too, of like needing structure to like be able to thrive. Um, and so I've always felt like I've kind of like needed a lot. And recently I've just been like letting myself need that. And instead of labeling it as bad or needy or high maintenance, I'm just like, I'm just a delicate flower and I need a very specific environment, okay?
I love it.
So like I consider myself a recovering perfectionist. Like I spent so much time like trying to push myself to fit into a box. And I'm just at a point where I'm like, I don't I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So like my days are a lot less structured. I'm accomplishing a lot less. I'm pursuing things that seem important to other people a lot less, and like I'm fucking here for it. Like it's yeah.
And
It's
how does all that feel?
incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes you get in your head about it, but it's really just the outside voices
yeah.
and the things that you're conditioned and the things that like you're used to hearing. And so like once you work through that, you're like, no, this actually is good. Like I like this.
So I love that you brought this up about, recovering perfectionists. And right as you were talking about it, I said, that's perfect. Because it is like, and so many of us are, right? And so many of us aren't recovering yet, that, we're still kind of in that mode. And I love that you also said that you're accomplishing less. So like, how are you taking yourself through that process of allowing, right? And moving away from fitting in the boxes and trying to do everything perfectly. And maybe even some of the should do's are in there that you're moving away from, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like I was always one to tie my worth to productivity and accomplishments. And so you said you're
Yes.
accomplishing less. Like, how are you doing this?
I mean, not well. Like it's just like letting it be a mess. But also like the thing that I'm focusing on reminding myself is that like it is messy. And so like the fact that it's messy means like that's correct. Like the perfectionist in me, like the person who needs the parameters, it's actually been helpful to give myself a definition of like, I know I'm doing it right because it's a hot fucking mess and everything's a shit show and I have no idea what I'm doing and my life is a dumpster fire, yet I'm happy.
Yes, I love it all so much.
So it's so funny because you're like moving out of this box, but like sometimes giving yourself the little like parameters and like actually this is a definition I'm giving myself so that I can function has been really helpful. Um yeah. So and then I know like I've used the butterfly analogy before, but that's helped me a lot too. Of like I know I said earlier that the transition is life, but I still haven't fully embraced that yet. So what I'm telling myself to like help myself get through and let myself kind of be is I've been telling myself that it's a season. And I do think it is. Like, you transition and change is a constant in life,
Yeah,
but like you're not always going to be in the same type of transition.
right.
So it's been helping me like give myself permission to do less by reminding myself that like this is temporary. And right now, like, I'm no longer a caterpillar where my role is clearly defined and my identity is clearly defined, but I'm also like not yet a butterfly where like I know what I am and what I'm made for and what I'm doing. And so, like, I've just been loving this analogy of like being like a little blob in a cocoon right now. And I'm like, what do you expect from me? Like, I'm a blob. Like, you put demands on me. Like, I'm a disintegrated caterpillar right now. So if you like need something from me, you're gonna have to wait till I'm a butterfly. And I don't know when that's gonna be. But it's gonna be eventually, just not right now.
Oh my God, this is why I love you so fucking much. Like, this is so great. So that is so, so great. When you're reminding, so is it that like when we get down to like the nitty gritty, kind of for the listeners, Mary Beth, like you're saying you're reminding yourself it's messy, it is messy and you're using this analogy of the butterfly. So in the moment, like when you start to have maybe the thoughts of, well, you should be doing this, or what about this? Or, then is it just being like becoming aware of that thought and then just going, stopping it and going, no, wait a minute. I'm in a cocoon.
A lot of it, yeah, and I think it depends on like where the demand comes from, right? So, for example, like I sent out my weekly newsletter and I've been doing that. I forgot last night, so it's like, okay, so I had that moment of I'm in a place where I'm not really putting a lot of demands on myself, but this is one thing that I want to do. And I dropped the ball last night, so like what am I gonna do? And just kind of walking through like, okay, where is this demand coming from? And it's actually something I want to do. It's a way that I want to serve my people in my email list. So I do want to follow through on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and send the email. But if it's something like I had a friend who wanted me to go to a Galentine's party with her, and was I gonna do anything else? Absolutely not. I was gonna sit in my house, drink wine, and watch Netflix for the fourth time that week. Like, and it was Tuesday, right?
Fine.
But like, I didn't want to. And so it was again like walking through like, where is this demand coming from? And like, she's a friend, right? So if you need me there, if you need support, like, cool, cool, cool. But like, giving myself instead of instantly feeling like, oh my God, I need to show up for her and I need to accept this invitation. I took a step back and I was like, what do you need me there for? Like, do you need my presence? Do you need support? Like, do you need something from me? And it turned out she was just inviting me because she didn't want me to be alone on Valentine's Day. And I was like, girl, leave me alone on Valentine's Day. I was like, I don't give a fuck. The last thing I want to do is go to a party. So I didn't go. Um,
You're such a sweet friend, by the way, for asking that question. And you're so thoughtful to ask that question rather than, just kind of making your decision yourself, without getting more information. Like, I just want you to know that's a very thoughtful approach to take.
Thanks, man. It
Yeah.
felt a little selfish, so I appreciate that. I was like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought that's what I got from it was nice for you to check in with your friend before you made your decision, about whether or not, because you were feeling like you didn't want to go. And I think it's thoughtful.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're sort of you are aware of your thoughts and feelings. You are getting curious, right, about where the demand is coming from.
Yeah.
And you're also just choosing yourself and you're letting yourself choose yourself and what you really want to do instead of what other people want you to do.
Yes, Paula, let yourself choose yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's a game
That's
changer.
your takeaway. It is, bro. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to get more I'm going to ask myself this question that you're asking yourself, this where is the demand coming from? Um I was really super stressed out about something a couple weeks ago, and it was like just weighing really heavy on me, this decision.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when I finally let that shit go, I was like, fuck it, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
Everything changed, like everything opened back up. It's like the sun came out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so and it was something that I was putting on myself. So I like that sort of where is the demand coming from?
Yeah.
Is it really internal to me?
Yeah. Yeah. I do that a lot, and I think a lot of us have been conditioned that way. So it's not that the demand originated from us, but it's like we've had the demand placed on us so often that we start placing demands on ourselves. And I don't think most of us ever get permission to stop. And so like you keep putting these demands on yourself and nobody else is gonna take those off because they're not putting them on you. And then if we don't realize that we're the ones putting ourselves through this and that we don't have to anymore, like we just keep perpetuating it. And like it's crazy. And that's like one of the things that makes me so passionate about my coaching because I feel like it's women oftentimes just because the way our society is set up. And then
Yep.
we're like buried in all this shit that like and we can't address everything. There's real struggles, like there's real oppression that we're dealing with, but like we can deal with the stuff that we're putting on ourselves. And so it's like if we can start there and then like own more of our power to address the bigger things, like we're just gonna have so much more capacity to like deal with the things that aren't as under our control.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because when we do choose ourselves, right, and when we do give ourselves this power, stop putting these demands on ourselves, even those little things, like it does help us sit in the seat of our own power. Like it gives us this self agency. It reminds us that we have that.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So, Mary Beth, have you always been like you are super, I feel like anyway, you're super authentic to you. Like I've always gotten that from you, from your energy, from your vibe.
Mm.
Have you always just naturally been authentic to you? Or because like I had this sort of, life or whatever, road where I wasn't. I was doing everything that I should do for everybody else and really like literally living my life for other people for like over 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of had this like huge sort of awakening or awareness to that.
Mm.
And then my life really started to change rapidly.
Mm.
And now I feel like I'm just so much more authentic to me. And like you said, I'm always changing and evolving, but can you talk a little bit about that for you? What has your journey been like?
Oh. It's been rough. Um, I have absolutely not been authentic to myself for most of my life. Um, I grew up in a very conservative household. um, with a lot of siblings. There's 9 of us. And
Whoa.
yeah, and so there were a lot of boxes to check. There were a lot of expectations to fill. There were a lot of rules to follow. And a lot of it made sense, right? Like there's 9 kids. You can't have people running around doing whatever they want. You don't have time to talk through every scenario and every feeling. Um, it makes sense, but also for like little ADHD, super sensitive MaryBeth, like it was very confining and confusing. And I felt like I learned pretty early on to like not need things, to go with the flow and like try to make sure everybody is as happy as possible, and not rock the boat, like all these things to like shrink myself.
Yeah.
And I'm a very loud, obnoxious person, okay? Like I'm, I'm very particular. I have a lot of feelings. And so, but like growing up like that, and then you internalize it oftentimes, right? So then it's like just dealing with like the shame of like, feeling like it was always too much, but also never enough
Oh,
was
God.
most of my childhood and my 20s. And then we were very what's the word, sheltered. I was homeschooled, and then we went to like a little co-op with other homeschoolers, and that was like when my little bubble was burst. And some of my best friends were dealing with drug abuse, abuse at home, um mental health struggles, and like all this stuff that like in my little bubble with my family we like pretended it didn't exist.
Yeah.
That like, so then I was dealing with like I'm supposed to be this like good little person and have my shit together and like be like exist in this world and behave as if the world is this bubble, and now I'm seeing the world is not this bubble, and like what are we doing? And I think that's when I started like wanting to be authentic, but I still didn't feel like I could, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, am I rambling? How are we
No,
doing?
no, no, I'm riveted.
Okay. So like it was like cracks in the facade, right? Where I'm like, this is this isn't gonna work, because like I've created this persona to fit into a world that like I felt like was kind of my family vibe, right? My family atmosphere. And then I'm exposed to like this other world, which I immediately recognized as the real world. Not that like your family bubble isn't real, but I immediately was like, that's fake, that's bullshit, that's like the Truman Show. And now that I have like friends on the outside, like I see how the real world functions, and it started like cracking the facade. And I was like, I can't be this person that I've been told that I'm supposed to be, because that person can't handle how fucked up the world is.
Yeah.
And so it's been like a journey for sure. But then, like, so that was like high school, right? And so then you're still dealing with, then you get into the corporate world, and it's a whole new set of rules and shit that you have to fit into, and like, and just being a woman in society, right? Like, dealing with dating, and then you have like all those expectations. So you like you're hearing it from all sides that you're really supposed to be smaller, literally, physically, with your attitude supposed to be smaller.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to say fuck as much as I do. So I felt like it was just like coming from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's like just your family, and then you get that outside influence, you're like, oh, maybe I just need to break away. But then it's not just your family, it's also the church, it's also college, it's also your work environment, it's also even your friends. And then any relationship advice you get, it's like, oh, he didn't call you back because you're too difficult, or you're too loud, or you're not feminine enough, this, that, and the other. So it's like you're constantly being inauthentic is constantly reinforced from like all angles. And I mean, I consider myself a recovering people pleaser too. So like I had a lot of inclination to want to be good, to want to get it together, to want to check the boxes, even though it wasn't like who I was. And so instead of recognizing like the importance of being authentic and want like pursuing that for a long time, I just thought I was bad at life. And I was like, oh, I'm just not like, I'm trying to think of like, I'm just like bad at everything. Do you know what I'm saying? And a lot of it's ADHD, and a lot of it's just because I don't fit into like the social box that everybody's trying to shove women into.
Yeah.
Um, and so for a long time, like I just carried that on me of like, oh, this is a me thing. Like it's on me that I don't picture myself in like a picket fence with a husband and 2.5 kids, and like it's on me that I'm struggling in a corporate environment like everybody else seems to be handling it so much better, or like it's my fault that like I can't keep up with my life. I get overwhelmed by normal things like paying bills, brushing your fucking teeth, like making dinner every night, like like normal things that people with ADHD struggle with. And like I didn't realize that for the longest time. Like I knew I had ADHD and I really thought it was just like I have trouble studying. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, oh, this is why my entire life is a shit show. Like, that's fine. So, so yeah, to like paint a picture of how inauthentic the vast majority of my life was, like, that's where I was at. And like I said, there were these little fractures of like, this isn't working. But then also it was like turned back on me of like, it's not working because of you. Like, you're just not good enough at being a person. And then like I really think it was COVID was my paradigm shift, man. Like there was a little bit before that. Like I traveled by myself a couple times, which was really powerful for me.
Yes.
Um, I had some friendships where I was able to be a little bit more authentic, and that was really helpful. And it's like anything, right? It's a journey, and so it's not overnight, and there were like little baby steps along the way. And it still is baby steps. Like it's every day. You get so many situations where you can choose to be authentic or not. And
Yes.
sometimes it comes naturally, and sometimes it's a struggle, and sometimes you go, I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna put the mask on right now because it's easier. So it's not like I've gotten to this place where I'm like 100% authentic all the time. Like I still don't know how to function in church half the time because I'm just like like I want to be authentic, but I know there's like a lot of like conflict between like who I am and where I'm at and like what the expectations are. And so I'm trying to not like sacrifice myself while also still trying to be respectful. So all that to say, like I definitely haven't arrived by any means. And I think we all like struggle with continuing to be authentic. But COVID like blew my world open. Um, Before COVID, I was like checking the boxes, running around all the time. People thought I was a huge extrovert. People still don't believe that I'm an introvert. Which is probably because I can talk like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which I love.
You need to take a break. Okay, good. I'm like, if you
No.
want to get it edgewise, let me know. Um, and I was just running all the time. Like I would get up and like go to the gym, whatever, and like go to work and then like go to happy hour with friends after and then like go clubbing on the weekend. Like I was never home. And I wore that as like a badge of honor because I felt like being busy was being productive, which
Yeah.
made me worthy.
Oh man, can I relate to that?
That's the whole thing. Yeah. And then everything comes to a screeching halt and you're like, oh shit. Like I had just broken up with this guy. Um, and I was basically living with him. So I was like, I moved back to my house. I was freshly single, and like my entire life like came to a screeching halt. And I went from like being on the go all the time to just being home all
Yeah.
the time. And praise the Lord, I was able to still work because like I think I would have lost my entire mind. But holy shit, man, like did that ever give me the time and space to like feel my fucking feelings
Yeah.
and think about like why I was doing the things I was doing because I was staying so busy. that I didn't have time to think through my why for anything. I was just trying to keep up with this impossible pace that I had set for myself.
Same. Yeah, and I didn't know who I was either when, yeah,
Bruh,
when that all came. Yeah.
no idea.
Hmm.
And so like it just forced me to like sit with myself, and then just, long lonely nights and shit, right? Like your brain just starts going and the feelings start coming up, and it was like, okay, there's a lot, there's a whole like well of things that I've been shoving down that are more true to who I am than all these things that I've been displaying and like all these outward behaviors that I've been presenting to people. Um, and then like it was kind of crazy, but did you hear of House Party, the like video chat app?
Maybe, maybe.
Anyway, doesn't matter. But like I reconnected with some old friends on House Party and then made some new friends, and like it was really interesting how seeing myself interact with people who didn't have a preconceived notion of me allowed me to like I was like experimenting with being authentic.
Yeah.
And it was like we were like video chatting like 4 a.m. drunk. So it was like we're just experimenting, and I'm like just seeing what comes up and seeing like what shit I actually want to talk about when there's not an expectation of what I'm supposed to be talking about. And like not that that's like the healthiest way to work through your authenticity journey. And I don't recommend getting drunk on a regular basis, but it definitely lowered the inhibitions. And I was just like, yeah. And then COVID went on for so long that I was like the shutdown went on for so long. I was like, this isn't a fluke. Like this isn't just feelings coming up because I went through a breakup, or feelings coming up because it's like a late night conversation. I was like, this is me.
Yeah.
And I need to start like I want to hang on to this and continue like incorporating my true self into my life, because I don't want to go back to how things are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I love it. You know, I as much as COVID kind of sucked in so many ways, like it was such an awakening moment for so many people on the planet.
Yeah, bro. Like I'm not trying to say it was easy,
Yeah.
and I definitely understand the privilege of being able to work and survive and be an introvert, even though I didn't realize it. Because yeah, I know it was hell for a lot of people. And it was rough, like I struggled, but for me overall, like yeah, it was a paradigm shift.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing, I love that it did that for you. And I remember hearing like so many people, like marriages ended, like it was a record number of marriages that ended and things like that because people finally had to deal with, not being busy all the time. Cause that's like
Yeah.
literally like, I don't know, like 98% of us on the planet, we're doing that, like living in that busy life and not dealing with everything and not feeling everything and just pushing it down and in and away. Um, and I love how you just, started to really sort of reflect and let things come up. That was just a beautiful process for you. I mean, like you
It
said, you
wasn't
struggled and stuff.
it wasn't a beautiful process, Paula.
It was a fucking mess,
It was a shit show.
but I mean,
A beautiful
overall,
result.
overall.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I want to you said you traveled by yourself and that was really powerful.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Like I'm curious, where'd you travel by yourself?
Baby things. So like earlier before COVID, I ventured out and I road trip to California, I think a couple times.
Amazing.
My grandma used to live in San Diego. So I have this special place in my heart for San Diego, and my family had driven out there like when we were younger for family vacations to go visit family and stuff. So it felt less intimidating because it was like a trip I'd been on before. And yeah, I I went once and just slept in my car. That was fun. And I really just like I didn't have anything to do. Like I just vibed. And that was really helpful for me to see like who I was alone.
Yeah.
Because which is actually crazy because okay, side note, because I'm ADHD. I used to hate personality tests because I felt like there wasn't enough context. And they ask you like, "Oh, how would you respond in this situation? How would you respond?" And I never knew what to say because I was like, "Well, who's asking? Who's around you? What are the expectations?" Like I was like, "How do people answer these without any context?"
Yeah.
And I thought it was like the dumbest thing ever. I was like, "These are stupid because the answers are going to change depending on the situation you're in." And like that didn't click for me. Like, you're a huge fucking people pleaser. Like, if you don't know what your personality is without the context of who's around you and what the demands are, like, bro, you need to get your shit together. So, like, being alone helped with that because it was literally like, okay, do you want to keep driving or do you want to take a break? What do you want to have for dinner? Do you want to have dinner? Like, do you want to go to this farmer's market? Do you want to go home with this sketchy guy? Like, what do you want to do? Like, it's just you, yourself, and you, bro. And like, so that was really, really powerful for me to be like, you're just out here vibing in a different state, like, you know, and I think having it be California where I'd been before and in the US, like it was helpful to like feel a certain level of safety, where
Yeah.
like I mean, not that the US is safe, but and then I drove to I drove to Santa Fe also one time. It's just like little baby road trips, by myself that kind of helped me.
Spread
Eh,
your wings.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I travel more by myself now, but those were pivotal in like helping me along that journey, if that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah, nice. Road trips are so freeing. Like when I think of road trip, I'm like freedom on that road, baby. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the church. And you said, like right now you're kind of, um, I think you said struggling a little bit with your authenticity in the church because you're
Yeah.
trying to be yourself but be respectful. And I just find that really interesting. Like, and I because I have such a huge history with the church, right? Like I grew up in a really conservative Catholic home,
Okay.
and just to give you just a short version, like so my dad beat us up physically, and it was usually after church on Sundays because we had giggled or something in church. We were kids,
Yeah.
and it was, it started off anyway. That's kind of the context with which I come from, and so when I got in, and then we had to go to Catholic school and we had to go to church 6 days a week, before school every day, and then again on Sundays. And my dad was only ever home on Sundays because he worked all the time. And then it was after church. We always got, the wrath.
Okay.
And um, and so, when I was able to get away from that, like I completely rebelled and rejected, and it took me many, many, many years to come back to a place where I could even like talk about it, without like getting all fired up. And I was able to sort of separate religion and spirituality and all this. And so that's why I find it so interesting, right? Because that's where I come from.
Yeah.
And I am, when like when you talk about church and like even going there, I just think like, oh my God, like organized religion, I just can't do it. I just like,
Yeah.
and so um I don't even know what my question is, but
I feel like
um
your question is what the fuck?
like I guess like if I'm being completely honest, you don't strike me as the person who would be going to church.
Yeah.
Hearing a little bit more about your background and that you grew up in a conservative home and that there were 9 of you and you were homeschooled, I guess that kind of, fills in some of the blanks. Um, but I guess maybe why do you feel like you struggle with being authentic in church? Is it like the kind of church? Is it the history that you have with it? Is it, like why do you feel like you can't just show up as your authentic self?
You made that into a really good question, Paula. I'm so proud of you. Um, so wow, I love this question. I think to like take a step back, I struggle a lot with um we commonly say like being true to myself, right? Like with the line between like the balance of being true to myself, but then also contributing to the greater good.
Mm.
And I know because of my past and like people pleasing how I tend to be, I know that I tend to like overcompensate and sacrifice and abandon myself for what I believe the greater good is, what somebody else tells me the greater good is, or even what I think I'm supposed to be doing. So knowing that I've like leaned too far that way, I struggle with like finding a balance between being true to myself, but then also contributing what I can. Because I do think those are intertwined. And I do think when we're the best version of ourselves, we bring we contribute to the world.
Yes. That I was just thinking that, like, isn't being your most authentic self your best contribution to the world and to what in your community and your church and everyone around you? Because that holds a vibration, right? Like we're all connected and because we live in an energetic universe, right? So we're all connected, really,
Yeah.
and so when we are true to ourselves, we're putting out this vibration, this literal vibration from our energetic bodies, our emotional bodies, right? That then is at a higher frequency
Yeah.
than when we are not being true to ourselves. And so then that contributes to raising the frequency for the entire collective of the human race. And so that's kind of where I was going with what I said.
Yeah. I I absolutely agree with that. And I think that sometimes I can struggle with identifying that.
Yeah.
The analogy I use is like what you want, right? So if I'm being true to myself, I'm asking myself like what I want, what feels aligned, like what and oftentimes it's in a moment.
Hmm.
For and a lot of us, I think, practice with small things, especially when we're first getting started on this journey.
Yeah.
So even if it's like, what do you want for dinner?
Yeah.
Instead of going like, oh, what do the kids want? What does the husband want? What's whatever, and then you're like, okay, what do I want? Well, then it's a layer of like, okay, I feel like eating junk food because like that's what I'm craving or that's what I'm wanting in this moment. But then there's also a deeper want of I want to take care of my body and I want to be healthy and I want to feel good tomorrow. So do I really want the junk food or do I actually want the chicken and broccoli? And oftentimes I feel like these things are put into they're made to seem to be competing with each other because they're two different things and you want them both. But instead of like competing with each other, I think that it's actually like a deeper want. But I think it's hard to get to that place. So try not to lose it. Come on, ADHD, we got this. Um, so it's like, do I want the junk food? Yeah, absolutely. But what do I really want is a healthy dinner. Okay. So then, like, to try to bring that back around to what we were talking about, is do I want to be authentic, but I also like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to make people at church uncomfortable. Right. And I think that those are not as conflicting as they feel but it does in the moment, right? So like I cuss a lot. I'm very expressive. I'm very sarcastic. I love to talk shit. Um,
I love that. I swear a lot too.
it's so fun. And like it's almost like layers of what's appropriate, right? So when you as you get to know somebody better, like you just naturally, like when the intimacy increases, more things are on the table and appropriate to talk about. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how I feel like with my personality. So I'm not going to be fake, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't drink or cuss, but I'm also not going to like show up at church with a beer in my hand, like what's fucking up, guys? You know what I'm saying? And so I think like yeah, I think that's like a journey for me of like, because I'm so used to like self-abandoning in order to people please, I'm
Right.
still learning of like, am I being inauthentic, or am I just tempering myself to be like appropriate in this setting? And is that different than self-abandonment? Does that make sense?
Totally.
And
Totally.
then like there is the issue of like, I don't even want to say this, but here the fuck we are.
Do it.
Like, I consider myself poly. And like that is not a church thing. That's really not a church thing. And so it's stuff like that where I'm like, I don't, it's come up in conversations with friends I've met at church as we develop friendships. Because
Mhm.
again, like authenticity is important to me and I'm not gonna fucking lie to you. But also like it's not in a church setting. It's absolutely something I'm gonna skirt around or change the subject or hem and haw, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like there are some things where I'm just we're not we're not being that authentic at church, because there's no, I don't see that really serving me in a sense that it doesn't feel safe to be that authentic in that area when you know that it's wrong in that setting.
Right. And then because church is also important to you, I'm hearing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so like I struggle with organized religion for obvious reasons. I think that's obvious. Um but like yeah, I absolutely believe in God. I do sometimes question like if I just landed on Christianity because like that's how I was raised, you know?
Yeah.
And we were very much raised like Christianity is the correct religion and all the other ones are wrong. And I really struggle with that. But my church is a Christian church, and that feels like right for me.
Mhm.
I mean, I could sorry, like we could go down the rabbit trail of like why circumstances created that, of course. But like that's where I'm at right now. And then I believe that the church is like a family, and you don't get along with everybody and you don't like everybody and people do dumb shit, and then you have to deal with the consequences, and it's like I don't even fucking like these people. And so I totally understand why church turns so many people off. Um and been there, bro. Like, and I'm probably the reason some people at church get turned off. Like, you know, like they really just let anybody in here. Like, but then also it's like that's that's what it comes with. Like that's family, that's relationship. Like you work through the shitty situations, and like that's part of where a lot of like growth and maturity I think comes from, is from being in situations and dealing with things and people that you don't necessarily want to,
Mhm.
but like working through those types of things, and dealing with discomfort and even agreeing to disagree, like all of those things are super scary to me and very uncomfortable, and I would much rather just avoid them and hang out in my basement.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I totally resonate with why people aren't into church, but for me it feels really important. And it's like a family, like you kind of it's you have to you have to be in that discomfort in order for it to work. Because if we're not there building relationships and we're not dealing with the people we don't want to deal with, like how are they ever going to get better, or how are they going to have the relationships they need to grow and develop it?
Yeah. And and that whole uncomfortableness, that's just part of like, I don't know, so much of life, right? Like,
Yeah.
and what's on the other side of that uncomfortableness typically is so much good and so much beautifulness and so much magic and so many other good things. But I'm curious. I know of Christian churches that are sort of more open and welcoming to, LGBTQ, poly, whatever. Um, and so, like, what about that? What about finding a church that is? Does that not feel right to you? Does that not feel Christian to you?
Um, that's a cool question because I actually hadn't considered that. Um, I grew up going to one church and didn't consider it wasn't even really on my radar because it's again like it's taking the you take the good with the bad, right?
Hmm.
And I think I took that concept too far, and it was like you just commitment is commitment, like you stick around, like that's what you do, you deal with the good and the bad, like just because it's not working for you, like it's not about you. But then 2020, like my church was real. So 2020 was important for me for my own like authenticity journey, but then also for being more aware of the racism in America. And like I being sheltered and being white, I didn't know a lot of what was going on. And then I turned a blind eye and like didn't ask questions
Right.
when I could have, you know? I chose the narrative of like, oh well, I don't know the whole story, you know, so maybe that person was beaten by the cops because something happened or they like, you know, and then instead of asking the questions of like what really happened, why are unarmed black people murdered over and over and over, I chose the narrative of like, oh, I don't really know the whole story, like it's probably another one off, like so ignorant. um but hey, you know, life's a journey. So 2020 was really important for me, like for racial awareness as well. And my church like referenced it like one time. And it was kind of like a kumbaya moment of like, oh, we love black people, even though we're a mega church and there's like 20 black people here. And you like never really see anybody of color on the stage or anything. And like that was really, I was pissed
Yeah.
actually, which is a very privileged position to be in. But because like being Christian, right? Like we preach that people matter and that people are created in the image of God and that people are at God's heart, right? So if we're not caring about people, then what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
And it was like an echo chamber of like, oh, well, that's like out there, which I dealt with in my childhood, right? Like, oh, that's the world, that's out there. Like, we're in this cute little bubble. And I was like, well, fuck that. Like, those are my people. You know, like I can't be out here like protesting on a Saturday and then come to church on a Sunday and pretend like they don't exist.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. And why is the church so silent on this matter? And like, why are we just leaving people out to dry? Um, and then one of the pastors who had worked at my church also he got his car fixed in my dad's shop. So like I was like, he's a cool guy. We had a couple conversations, super loved him. But then he's black and he was so generous and thoughtful with his time and energy. He did like a bunch of like Facebook lives just explaining how he felt, like what he was going through. And then it was finally like, sorry, I'm all over the place. But the protests were very like pretty anti-religion, right? Because like organized religion has done a lot of harm and there wasn't support, right? So like in the protests I was involved in and the movements that like I was aware of were very separate and even against like religion and Christianity, which is totally understandable. But I was like, I feel like these shouldn't be at odds. Like as Christians, like we should be involved and there should be more alignment instead of these two ideas, like that Black Lives Matter and that we love God. Those should be the same thing, like because we believe God loves people. So what
Right.
are we doing? So anyway, like having somebody I knew and trusted speaking out and sharing, and then finally getting that perspective of like how, as people who say we love God and we love people, like how we should be operating and the things that we can be doing, and like speaking about it, excuse me, from a biblical perspective, and advocating that Christians should be involved and that racism is a problem that the church should be addressing, was so like, sorry, I did not intend to be talking about church this much on your podcast, Paula.
Well, hey, roll with it.
It did not seem like your category. Um, but it was just like so what I needed in that moment. And I was so grateful for the way he was willing to step up and speak about it and then just share and make himself a resource for people who had just allowed themselves to be blind and ignorant for so much of their lives. And yeah, so then when he was starting a church, I was like, fuck yeah, bro, I'm there. So all that to say, I haven't really considered any other churches because I'm like finally at a church that's so much more aligned than my past one.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Because I was thinking like, okay, so does that then relate to all people then, right? To the LGBTQ community, which I don't know if poly is even considered part of, I mean, I'm part of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
But, and so I, liken it to being similar to poly. Um, but I was just thinking, okay, in all of that you were saying about race and stuff, does that then just, sort of encompass everybody?
No.
No.
Um, yeah, that's one of the things that I struggle with. Is that my church believes that there are two genders and that um yeah, and that like being gay is like a confusion or like a misconception or um like not right. And that's definitely something that I struggle with. Um and I guess I hadn't really thought, I think like being raised like that's always been like what I've heard in a Christian environment.
Hmm.
And that's like part of the authenticity struggle, right? It was like I know and I've heard very loudly that that's what the church believes, and like I don't believe that. So there's always been like, that's another one of those things, where it's like, oh, I'm not like, that's that's not something that me and my church agree on.
Right. Right.
And I don't think I ever really considered that it could be, actually. you know
Yeah, I mean, I brought it up because I wasn't sure. Maybe you didn't, ever consider it or hadn't ever seen the Christian churches who are, accepting of gays. Because again, I grew up like you, very conservative, and that gays weren't accepted,
yeah.
or poly people or anything like that. But then I started meeting these people and later in life, who were Catholic even. Christian and Catholic even, and they were part of these churches all of their lives who were more open and accepting. And it's like, oh my God, that exists. Wow. Okay, cool. And then now I just happen to see them all the time since I've become aware of that, right? Like I notice the churches that have, like a rainbow flag, in,
Yeah. Yeah.
in front of their church, or they'll have 7 doors of the rainbow colors on their on their grass or something,
Yeah.
saying, everyone is accepted here. And so that's why I asked, because I just wasn't sure what your perspective was, or what your what had kind of been in your awareness.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you talking through that, and thank you for um, sharing your authenticity so boldly and bravely, and saying that you're poly, because like I think that's fine, and I totally understand how that is possible, and so and I feel like you felt comfortable enough to say that, and so that really is it really, I don't know, it makes me feel good that you felt safe enough to say it here.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, I have so many other questions. Maybe we need to do another episode.
Sorry, I did get a took me a while to tell some of those stories.
No, that's fine. I love it when you're deep into it. So, but Mary Beth, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know that there will be a ton of listeners who will be able to relate to a lot of what you said, and I love how just honest you were about where you still have struggles with authenticity, and again, like I think that's just really relatable, and it is a journey, right?
Um,
Like
yes.
I can say that I'm walking more authentically than I ever have on the earth, but it's not over, and I'm constantly changing and evolving, and so it's every step that you take, right, is like you said, it's the small things every day, which is a good sort of emphasis for the listeners. It's the small decisions you make every day about, choosing your authenticity or not. And
Yeah.
or it might be really small things like, what do I want for dinner? Or do I want to go out with this friend? Or it might be really big things. Um, like, do I want to keep staying in this corporate job, or do I want to keep going to the church, or whatever? Those might be bigger decisions, and so it's really choosing our authenticity in every moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how like the people around you have such an impact. You
Mm,
know, I've seen that like I have such an easier time being authentic around like newer friends or newer people because
yeah.
they don't have those expectations of me. And I know I won't have to explain myself because like that's all they know. But like, like my mom, right? I still struggle with that. And so I think it's just so interesting. Like my point is I want to encourage people because it doesn't struggling in a moment like doesn't mean you're losing progress or that you're becoming less authentic. Like we all still struggle in different moments, and you can still be like progressing on your authenticity journey and still have a hard time being your full self in certain environments or with certain people. And that doesn't mean you're failing.
No, I agree. I thank you for saying that, Mary Beth. In fact, even if you do take a step back, you got to kind of think of it. What's the analogy? Think of it as the bow and arrow, right? Like you got to pull the bow back, or right? No, the arrow. You got to pull the arrow back. So that's kind of likened to taking a step back before it shoots forward a big jump, or a huge amount. And
Yeah.
so I love that you said that. Thank you for bringing that forward.
You're so
Um,
sweet.
so you are so awesome. Let's tell people how they can connect with you or follow you and get into your world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Fierce Framework pretty much everywhere. It is an acronym, but you shouldn't need that. I have a video podcast on YouTube, also on podcast platforms. I'm on Instagram, and if you like the Hot Mess Express part of me, then you should definitely follow me on TikTok because I'm all over the place on TikTok.
I love your TikTok stuff. And I'm not even on there, but I get the benefit of seeing some of your videos that are shared in our pod sister group, and like I love it.
That's hilarious. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So you're the fierce framework everywhere.
Correct. Yep, that is one area of my life that I got together.
Right on, right on. Well, go follow Mary Beth, listen to her podcast. You will laugh, you will get thought-provoking stuff, you will like get permission slips for all the things. Like, I'm telling you, this gal is it. This chick is it, man. I love her. Thank you, Mary Beth, for spending time with me today. And I have just enjoyed our conversation immensely. And like I said, I have lots more questions. So like, we're either going to have to connect on the side or we're going to have to do this again.
I'm gonna need a minute because my cheeks hurt from smiling. But yes, you are a fucking gem.
Oh,
I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Love you.
All right, love you too.
Like I said before, I think Mary Beth just has a cool vibe and she makes me laugh. And I love that. I'm also super in love with her laugh. I love her honesty and how open she was. And that freaking blob thing was hilarious, dude. Like, she's so funny. She shared a lot of good insights. And I have to say that I think you should listen to her podcast. Like, go find her and get into her world. You will appreciate how she keeps it simple and other things. Like, she encourages you and gives you permission slips right and left. Like, go get into her world. Okay, here are the takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, stop pushing yourself to fit in a box and be here for all that isn't that. Number 2, the in-between time is life. It's not about arriving anywhere. Number 3, let it be a mess because life is messy, and that's correct. And there's a little like side joke on the that's correct thing. Mary Beth has some TikTok videos out there about where she does that. It's so cute. Number 4, transition and change are constants in life. We aren't always going to be in the same type of transition. Everything is a season and everything is temporary. Number 5, let yourself be a blob sometimes with no demands. Like, you have to listen to the episode to get that one. So I love it. Number 6, let you be your choice. Stop abandoning yourself. Choose yourself and what you want. Number 7, ask yourself where the demand is coming from. Give yourself permission to stop placing demands on yourself. Number 8, being inauthentic is constantly reinforced from all angles in our society. It takes mindful courageousness to be authentic. Number 9, there are so many opportunities every day, big and small, where you can choose to be authentic. Choose authenticity. Number 10, being productive does not determine your worth. The fact that you are breathing determines your worth. Who's ready to try mud water? It's the coffee replacement drink I have every morning, and it tastes really good with a little honey and oat milk. My 2 favorite things about it are that it's organic and that it's made with mushrooms, so it has tons of health benefits. Here are 6 things to love about mud water. 1, it helps with focus and gives you energy without the jitters. Excuse me. Number 2, it's loaded with 2.2 grams of mushrooms per cup, and it doesn't taste like mushrooms. Number 3, it's surprisingly delicious. AF. Number 4, it's 100% organic, clean, and pure. Number 5, it supports your immune system and gut health. And number 6, the company supports mental health, which I love. The best part is you can get a 15% discount using my link, which is mudwater.com/Paula Schuster. That's mudwter.com/PaulaSchuster. And I'll put a link in the show notes too. It was pretty freaking cool hanging out with you again today. And I look forward to next week on the Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway podcast. Thank you so much for being here. You know, our lives are full, and I'm just super grateful that you take time out of your day to be here with me. I hope my podcast touches you in some way. I hope it helps you. I hope it inspires you, fills you up, sheds new light on things, whatever, something. I hope, that it does something for you. And I hope that this particular episode helps you let things be messy. Like, I hope it gives you permission to let things be messy, because that's life. There are so many more amazing episodes coming up on the way. So please make sure that you follow along on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening, and make sure you follow or subscribe. And if any of the episodes resonate with you, please share them with somebody. Like, take a second and email or text the link to this episode to someone that you think could really use this conversation. Or if you think one of the other ones, if someone could use one of the other episodes, text them that link. I would absolutely love it if you left a review or rating, because that helps other people find the podcast, and it just like inspires me to keep going. And finally, like, I would love to connect with you. That's one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place, and because I want to connect with more people. And so if you ever just want to chat, like, even if it's not about the podcast, maybe it's about something else, like, just get to know each other. You can always reach me at paula@reikiflowmn.com. I'm super approachable and I want to meet you. All right. I love you all so much. Peace out.